The richest man in your office is the one everyone secretly feels sorry for. His name is Frank. He drives a 2013 Accord with a dent he never bothered to fix. He parks in the spot nobody else wants at the far end of the lot. He brings the same lunch in the same soft cornered bag every single day. When the office orders food, somebody always offers him a slice, the way you offer charity to someone who looks like they can't afford their own. He says, "No thanks," every time, and they think it's pride. Here's what none of them know. Frank could walk into his boss's office this afternoon, quit on the spot, and never need another paycheck for the rest of his life. The house is paid off. The accounts crossed $2 million years ago. Frank is the richest person in that building, by a wide margin. And he has spent 19 years making sure not one person in it could ever tell. He's not cheap. He's not broke. He's doing one thing on purpose. One habit that looks like poverty from the outside and is quietly building a fortune on the inside. And here's the part that should bother you a little. You know a Frank. You work with one. You're related to one. Maybe you're married to one. Or, and this one stings, maybe you used to be one before the money got comfortable. Today, I'll show you exactly what Frank's habit is, why almost everyone abandons it the second they can afford to, and why that one decision quietly costs people everything. If you want more breakdowns like this, hit subscribe. It costs nothing, and it's the only reason I keep making these. Here's Frank's habit, with nothing hidden in it. He never let his life get more expensive than it was the day he started. That's the whole secret. And almost everybody does the exact opposite, without ever consciously deciding to. The raise comes in, the car gets a little nicer, the bonus lands, the apartment gets a little bigger. The promotion arrives, and suddenly the old furniture looks shabby. The old phone feels embarrassing. The old life feels too small for the new title. The money shows up, and the lifestyle opens its mouth and swallows it whole. Every time. You've watched this happen to people you love. The cousin who landed the good job and somehow has less breathing room now than when she was broke. The friend who doubled his income and still texts you on the 28th asking if you can spot him until payday. Frank watched it too, and early on, he made a strange decision. When his money went up, his life would stay exactly where it was. He kept living like the version of himself who earned half as much, and let the difference quietly pile up, out of sight, year after year. That gap between what he earned and what he let himself spend was the only thing that was ever going to make him free. Not the salary, not the side hustle, not a lucky bet. The gap. The habit is nothing more than refusing, for decades, to let that gap close. Let me tell you about a guy I'll call Danny, because you already know 3 of him. Danny waited 4 years for a promotion. When it finally landed, it added about $800 a month to his take-home pay. He earned every dollar of it. The night he got the news, he stood in his kitchen and felt, for the first time in a long time, like he could finally breathe. So he breathed. A nicer lease because he had earned it. Bigger grocery runs, the good coffee, the better gym, a couple of subscriptions he meant to cancel and never did. None of it was reckless. Each piece felt small, reasonable, deserved. Within about 4 months, the $800 was gone, dissolved into a life that felt completely normal the instant he reached it. Here's the part nobody warned Danny about. He wasn't happier. The promotion he'd wanted for 4 years bought him the exact same Sunday night dread, just at a slightly higher altitude. Now picture the version of Danny who did nothing. Same car, same apartment, same coffee. He takes that $800 a month, feeds it into a plain index fund, and forgets it exists. At an ordinary market return, over 30 years, that one boring choice is worth close to $1 million. Not from luck. From a raise he already earned and simply chose not to feel. That's the entire tragedy of lifestyle creep. It almost never feels like a tragedy while it's happening. It feels like finally living. Every raise you let your life rise to meet is a withdrawal from a future version of you that you will never get to meet. Danny didn't lose the money in a crash. He lost it on things that felt like breathing. The loudest place this habit shows up is the driveway, because the car is the one thing the whole world sees. Frank's manager, Greg, leases a new blacked-out SUV every 3 years for around $700 a month. He'll be making a car payment until the day he retires because there's always a next lease. To everyone in that parking lot, Greg is the one who made it, and Frank is the one who didn't. Run the actual numbers and the picture flips completely. Frank bought a reliable used car for $15,000 and drove it for a decade. The difference between his cost and Greg's, call it $500 a month, went straight into the market instead of into a metal box losing value at every red light. From 25 to 65 at historical market returns, that one ordinary swap is worth about $1.3 million. Be honest for a second, which one is parked in your driveway right now? The badge or the boring car quietly buying your freedom? Because the new car was a slow disaster for Greg from the moment it became his. A new vehicle loses about a tenth of its value the second it leaves the lot, close to 20% in the first year, nearly half by year 5. Greg isn't buying transportation. He's renting a feeling, and the feeling wears off by the second oil change while the payment never does. The average new car payment in this country just hit a record around $770 a month. Greg has the badge on the hood and a knot in his stomach every time the statement lands. Frank has the boring car and a number in an account that means he never has to feel that knot again. Same parking lot. 2 completely different lives, and the one that looks like winning is the one quietly losing. The same habit shows up in the house, except now the numbers are big enough to ruin people. And they do. Think about a couple you actually know. Maybe it's your cousin and her husband. The income climbed, and they did exactly what you're supposed to do. They bought the dream house, the good zip code, the kitchen island, the rooms they pictured filling with a whole life. From the day they got the keys, something quietly went wrong. The mortgage ate 40% of their take-home, then closer to 50% once taxes, insurance, and the things that break in a big house got added in. They had the square footage and nothing left to live inside it. You've sat at their table. You felt it even if you couldn't name it. The slightly too bright kitchen, the slightly too quiet dinner, the generic cereal in the 4,000 square foot house. The way conversation never quite drifts near money because there's a tightness there nobody wants to touch. They own a beautiful thing they're too broke to enjoy, and they'll spend the next 30 years paying for the privilege. Frank could have bought that house twice over in cash. Instead, he stayed in a 3-bedroom in an older neighborhood, gutters that could use cleaning, because a small payment is exactly what kept his money free to grow. From the street, your cousin's house looks like success, and Frank's looks like settling. On the balance sheet, the big house is the single most common reason. Good, hardworking people reach 50 with nothing. It didn't make them rich. It made them broke with a beautiful kitchen and a quiet ache they could never quite explain. Here's where people misread Frank completely, because the habit was never about being cheap. Watch where his money actually goes. He'll drive a car for 9 years and refuse to replace a phone that still works. In that same week, he'll write a check for his granddaughter's college fund without blinking. Ruthless on the things nobody sees. Generous on the things that last. You've been on the other side of this. You've paid full price for the version with the logo and called it treating yourself. Be honest about what it actually bought you. A moment of being seen over before you even got back to the car. Money spent on looking a certain way is gone the instant it leaves your hand. Money spent on something real is still working for you 30 years later. So Frank starves the budget everyone can see and feeds the one nobody can. One crowd spends their whole life buying the costume. Frank quietly bought the thing the costume was only ever pretending to be. Now, let me be honest, because there's a way to take this too far and it becomes its own quiet prison. Frank is not a monk. He's not planning to die with a huge account and a small gray life he never let himself enjoy. The habit was only ever a tool for one job, getting the gap wide enough, early enough, that the money does the heavy lifting instead of him. Once that machine is built and running, spending on things that genuinely make life better isn't a betrayal of the habit. It's the entire reason he kept it. Frank flies now instead of doing the brutal 12-hour drive. He paid without flinching to be in the room when his grandkids were born. He buys the good boots that last 15 years and the plane ticket to the people he loves. Here's the whole philosophy in one sentence. Spend freely on what actually makes your life better. Refuse to spend on what only makes your life look better to strangers. The first is the reward the habit was built to pay for. The second is the trap it was built to help you escape. Frank isn't allergic to spending money. He's allergic to spending it for the wrong audience. That's what nobody sees when they look at the man in the old Accord and feel sorry for him. He isn't trapped. He's the only one in that lot who isn't. Still, none of this is free, and Frank would be the first to tell you so. The habit costs something real. It just doesn't cost money. It costs you the way people look at you. You become the one who keeps the old car while the group trades up, the one who says no to the trip, who brings lunch, who doesn't have the thing everyone else just financed. People notice. Somebody makes a joke that's really a question. A relative quietly decides you must be struggling, and you sit there knowing the truth and saying nothing, because there's nothing you could say that wouldn't sound like bragging or lying. You know this feeling if you've ever tried it. Think about your brother-in-law, the good one, the one you actually like. He gets a bonus and buys a thing he's been talking about for months. For about 3 weeks, he's genuinely, visibly happy. Then he's just a guy with a thing and a payment, already eyeing the next one. You watch it happen and say nothing, because nothing you could say would land right. That ache, that quiet not saying, is the real tax on Frank's habit, not dollars. The slow social cost of looking a little behind, paid at dinners and reunions for years, and most people simply cannot pay it. The fear of looking like they're failing is stronger than the wish to actually win. If that's hitting close to home, drop a comment telling me the one thing you're going to change about your money this week. I read every one of them. Frank made peace with looking behind a long time ago. He did the honest math on what being admired actually costs and decided the silence was the cheaper buy. Underneath the car, the house, the packed lunch, there's one thing about Frank that almost nobody can copy, and it has nothing to do with discipline. Frank genuinely does not care what you think of him. Not as an act, not as something he's working on. He's simply free of a weight that quietly bends almost every other person's financial life. He doesn't need the room to see the watch. He stopped keeping that scoreboard so long ago, he honestly forgets it exists. You can feel it when you're near him, a stillness most people never get close to. Here's what that freedom is worth in plain dollars. The moment you stop needing to perform, an enormous amount of spending just vanishes. The upgrade you bought so someone would notice. The round you grabbed so you'd seem generous. The outfit for the one night you saw those people and never again. One Schwab survey found the average person burns $400 to $500 a month on things they don't need, kept up and paid for in monthly installments, spent on an audience that was never really watching. Most of us make money decisions based on the imagined opinion of people who are themselves one missed paycheck from disaster. It's like taking swimming lessons from a man who's drowning. Frank climbed out of that pool decades ago. He's not braver than you, and he's not smarter than you. He just quietly stopped competing in a race that has no finish line, and never once paid out a single dollar to anyone still running it. So if Frank's habit is this powerful, why does almost nobody keep it? Because it's hardest to hold at the exact moment it finally starts paying off. Let me show you what that costs with 2 men hired into the same company the same week. Same job, same starting salary. I'll call them Ray and Tom. Ray celebrated the new job the way you're supposed to. He leased the car that matched the title, signed for the apartment that stretched him to the edge, upgraded the phone on schedule, the wardrobe on trend, always half a step ahead of every raise. For years, Ray looked like the one who was winning. At the company parties, he was. Tom kept driving the car he already owned, parking most mornings a few spots down from a quiet older guy in a 2013 Accord. He split a modest place and rooted a fifth of every paycheck into investments before the money ever touched his checking account. For years, Tom looked like the one who never quite arrived. Then life did the thing life always eventually does. A bad quarter, a reorganization. And on one ordinary Tuesday morning, Ray and Tom got the same envelope on the same desk. Same layoff, same severance. In that single moment, 10 years of invisible difference became the only thing that mattered. Ray had almost nothing saved and a stack of payments that didn't pause just because his income did. Within 3 weeks, he took the first job that called on their terms, because the obligations never stopped to ask how he was doing. Tom had a cushion deep enough to breathe. He took a few months, turned down 2 offers that weren't right, and accepted the one that was on his own timeline. Same salary the whole way. Same town. The only difference, one of them spent a decade buying the look of wealth and the other spent it quietly buying the real thing. The biggest thing Frank built, he will never see finished because it doesn't arrive in his lifetime. It arrives in his kids and in theirs. Picture 2 children at 2 different dinner tables. At the first table, money is a tight, quiet subject. The thing the parents fight about in low voices after the kids are supposed to be asleep. That child learns, without a single lesson, that money is fear and that the way you prove you're okay is to buy something other people can see. They inherit the anxiety whole, like an heirloom nobody asked for. At Frank's table, the car is paid off. The raise gets invested and the word equity gets said as casually as passing the salt. That child grows up watching calm, watching a gap that quietly grows in the background, watching two parents who simply are not afraid. That child starts their whole life from a place Frank had to claw his way toward. The ceiling Frank spent 40 years pushing against just isn't there for them. They'll never even know it existed. That's what the man in the old Accord is really building. Not a number. A different starting line for somebody who isn't born yet. And if you want to start building the same thing, you don't have to change your whole life this week. You do one thing. The next time your money goes up, a raise, a bonus, anything at all, you leave your life exactly where it is and you send the whole difference somewhere it can grow before you ever get the chance to feel it, before it ever becomes normal. Freeze your number once, then keep it frozen. That single held decision is the entire habit. Everything else is just what it looks like from the outside. Tomorrow morning, Frank is going to park that Accord at the far end of the lot again, in the spot nobody wants, and walk past people who still quietly feel sorry for him. He's going to eat the lunch he packed, say no thanks to the offered slice, and let every one of them keep believing he's the one who never made it. And he's going to be, by a distance none of them can imagine, the freest person in the building. Here's the only question that matters. When your money goes up, does your life quietly go up with it? Or does it hold still while the gap underneath it grows? Almost everyone says they'd keep the habit. Almost no one does. The world will never stop telling you the upgrade is the reward. That the new thing is what arriving looks like, that living below your means is something you outgrow. It's the most expensive advice you'll ever take. The flashy ones are performing a future. The quiet ones are building one. And from the outside, you genuinely cannot tell them apart, which is exactly the way the quiet ones like it. Be a Frank. Pick the gap, keep the habit, and let them think whatever they want.